Most stories start with waking up. This one starts with falling asleep. What's going on, everyone? Michael R. Schulteis here, author of the Rossabal Saga, which you can see, as always, on the shelf behind me. Today I'm coming at you with my review of Dark Hilarity by Joseph Sale. This is book one of the Illuminad series. Now, I would characterize this as a dark portal fantasy centering on the friendship between two young girls and later two young women. There is a time gap here, a time jump, and they both go through some pretty heavy stuff. The two are obsessed with a band called Valentine Killshot. It's a screamo group, I guess the kids are calling these things. And their music is about this fantasy world called Daeshta. But what nobody knows, outside of the band, is that Daeshta is real. Frontman Jed Main figured it out all back in the day. He's got it all dialed down. He's figured out how to get there, spend some time there, and come back and bring this amazing and dark and twisted and wonderfully weird world to life through music. And that's where all of Valentine Killshot's music comes from. I'd say you get kind of a dark version of Narnia vibes with maybe some shades of H.P. Lovecraft. A little. I'm going to tell you up front, this book deals with some dark and heavy themes. It's in the name, Dark Hilarity. So if you're new here, we're going to do what we usually do. I'm going to break this down into characterization, plot, world building. I'll give the book an overall rating. And then we'll discuss who is this book for and who is it not for. So let's begin. All right, characterization. In my opinion, this is where this very dark book shines. We get two friends, two young girls, young ladies, Tara and Nicola. And we meet them at a time when they're both young. They're about 11. And then there's a time jump. We meet them again when they're young ladies, young adults. They're both quite scarred, although for somewhat different reasons. The book talks about how Nicola comes from a home with a father who was very abusive, angry, violent, some other stuff. This aspect of her backstory is quite dark. It's very heartbreaking. Tara suffers a tragedy. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here. Suffers a tragedy fairly early into the book that leaves her very deeply scarred and unable to trust other people. So this aspect of the story is very heavy and very dark, and I have to say that the way that the author handles the characterization around this issue is deft, it is very wonderfully done, and it is very compassionate. You get two very flawed, very scarred people who have trust issues and who, guess what, sometimes act in ways that are not great, not helpful, not productive, which is what you'd expect. And it's so very wonderfully and very compassionately done that I really have to give Joseph Sale, the author, a lot of props here. I'd say on the whole, the author combines these emotional gut punches with some very, very compassionate characterization. The friendship between these two girls, and then again as young women, does suffer. It does take some hits along with what they go through, which is, again, what you would expect. And this aspect of the story was beautifully done. It felt very real, very human, very raw sometimes. And you got to rooting for them, not only each of them on their own, but also for their friendship. And I think this aspect of the story, the author just deserves all the credit. This is just a complete, total win. So the characterization for these two is just superb. I have only praise for how the author handles it. Now, what about everybody else? Well, you do get a point of view, a more minor point of view from Jed Main, the frontman of Valentine Killshot. He's pretty messed up. He's obsessive. He is without any scruples at all. He is a real piece of work. And he kind of works as a rock star, I gotta say. As a rock star with aspirations in this dark fantasy, portal fantasy world, he really works for me. There is a sympathetic character, a more minor role, who I liked, but I wanted more here. Now we're getting to where the book was a bit more uneven for me. This character is in the fantasy world of Daeshta. More about that in a minute. And I just wanted a lot more with this character. It was very promising, and I just wanted a lot more than we actually got. So, on that note, let's change gears now and talk about plotting. So I've already talked about this. The book handles a major time jump of a number of years. I did want more here. I think this should have been a longer book. Could have fleshed out some of these plot points and developed them better. I should mention that early on we find out people can go into Daeshta when they're dreaming, and usually this means drugs. There's a lot of some other ways too. So there's some adult themes in this. There is some violence here. I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but this is definitely there's a lot of mature content and themes in this book, including in the plotting aspects of it. So there's a lot of good here on the whole. I did feel that the plotting was somewhat uneven, and that the unevenness mostly came from some important plot points that just felt that I didn't feel that we got enough development. I wanted them to be more fleshed out than they were, a bit more time for the story to breathe. But what we have here is still very good, and there's a lot of just really interesting stuff here. So on that note, let's switch gears to talk about world building. Now, the world of Daeshta it's a portal fantasy world, so people from our world go there. It's a recognized thing. They understand. There are humans there too, but there's also sentient wolf people. There's gorillas, which are ape-like, somewhat. They're sentient, but they look kind of like gorillas. There's lizard people, and there's the laughing god. There's some kind of Lovecraftian-esque aspects a little bit. I get kind of that vibe. Now, I don't read a lot of portal fantasy, and I'm probably going to be dating myself here when I say that, Narnia is the comparison that I reach for, but this is a much darker version of that. This is a much darker concept. I think on the whole this works very well. It's very interesting. There's a lot of intrigue. You kind of have a lot of questions. There is a darkly whimsical aspect to it, which kind of makes sense for what I know of the conventions of the genre. As with the plotting, and you might find this a bit of a theme now, I just kind of wanted a little bit more here. For example, why do people go to this world? Why is there this connection? I just wanted more, and maybe we'll get more. I'm trying to be fair here. Your mileage might vary, and I think we might get more answers in the subsequent books of this series. This is a 3-book series, last I checked. With that said, I have plenty of interest in this world. It is a fascinating world, and I'll bet there's a lot more secrets waiting to be uncovered, mysteries to be investigated, all kinds of fun things. So, all of that said, overall rating. Now, I struggled with the overall rating here. The characterization pulled it up. The unevenness in the plotting did pull it down a little bit. World building was, again, some unevenness, but also there's a lot of good there. So I'm landing on a 4 out of 5. This is a very good book. It does a lot of things well, and some things very well indeed. I'll add that I was tempted to do a 4.25 out of 5, but I haven't done quarter stars yet, and I don't know if I want to get into that aspect of, if I want to make it that fine-grained. If you have an opinion on that, please let me know in the comments. Alright, so who is this book for? Well, let me say this clearly up front. The characterization and the themes in this book are probably going to either make it or break it for you. If you would like to read stories about people who have gone through some pretty awful stuff, and then we have a story about resilience and healing, and you have someone who's a damaged person, okay, that's realistic, that makes sense with what these 2 young ladies have gone through. But then we get this beautiful friendship and this ultimately, I think, this very wonderful story. If that appeals to you, I think this is going to be a great book for you. If you like stories about friendship, but overcoming the darkness, the trauma that life can inflict on us, then this is going to be a great book for you. I feel confident about that. What else? Well, I think my perspective on this is that Portal Fantasy has been a bit on the outs of late. I feel like I don't see a lot of just the straight up classic Portal Fantasies. Like, I have here the Great Book of Amber, which is the complete Amber Chronicles by Roger Zelazny. And this is, the similarity here is this is a classic kind of Portal Fantasy. Although I will say that one big difference, and this gets into where I think this book is different from much Portal Fantasy, even today. This is not a story about going into another world and then becoming this, amazing hero. This heroic, you're leveling up and becoming this sort of fantasy hero in a different world. This is not that. So on that note, let's get into, who is this book not for? Okay, so who is this book not for? Well, I've already said it pretty much, I think, but if you don't want to read about, and it's, not everybody does, and it's quite understandable, if you don't want to read about characters who have undergone some real trauma and abuse, and then are recovering from that, like, for some people, and this is very understandable, it's just too much. They don't want to, that's not an escape for them to read about that. So, you may find yourself in that camp, and I'm just going to suggest you pass on this one. Now, if you want a light, breezy read, well, obviously that's not the case here either. Maybe you like Portal Fantasy, but you like more what the lit RPG genre is doing some pretty amazing things with, with Portal Fantasy, where you go to another world, you become, you go on great, these grand adventures, and you become, you power up, you become a fantasy hero. That's not this either. So, that probably gives you a good idea. Again, I think that the themes and the characterization are going to be what makes this book or breaks it for you. So, how about you? Have you read Dark Hilarity by Joseph Sale? Do you want to read it? Do let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk to you there. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It does help to grow the channel, and I personally really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will hope to catch you on the next video.